Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Emma Walters. I'm Senior Social Development Specialist with the NGO and Civil Society Centre. Welcome to our CSO Conversations on Gender and Heat Stress. Before we get started, I'd just to start with a few housekeeping matters. Can you please keep your audio on mute while the webinar is ongoing? If you have any questions, send them through the Zoom chat box or use the raise hand function. And we're going to record the session and share it through our internal channels, through our community site and through Development Asia. So let's get started. I'd like to open by asking Samantha Hung, who's the Director of the Gender Equality Division of the Climate Change and Sustainable Development Department, to make the introduction and welcome remarks. Over to you, Sam.
Thanks very much, Emma, and good afternoon or greetings in whatever time zone you are to colleagues and friends across the world. So I'd just like to start by setting the scene by saying that across Asia and the Pacific, heat waves are becoming longer, hotter, and more dangerous. But we know that the most serious costs are not the most visible, and that's really the focus of today. Women and girls are bearing the brunt of extreme heat. When summers are too hot, girls often miss out on school to take on extra chores like collecting water. When outdoor work must stop because it's too hot during the hottest hours, women in informal labor jobs often lose their day's income. And when crops fail during droughts, it is women who are often left to stretch shrinking household budgets, cut meals, or take on extra debt. So these are just some of the gendered impacts. Heat stress also impacts care, and more time spent on looking after sick children or older adults in hot conditions inevitably means less time for paid work, education, rest, or leisure. And this has a negative ripple effect on income, health, and gender equality because women are often at the center of care. These are unique challenges that civil society and women's organizations are very well positioned to address. They are often the first to make these impacts visible, the first to test solutions and respond to the realities on daily life. Their insights help us see beyond statistics to understand how heat stress risks are reshaping the lives of women and vulnerable communities on the ground. And that is why today's conversation really matters. People in need, Pin and Bante Shrey, working out of Cambodia and the UK, are demonstrating how solar-powered cooling can protect not only crops, but more importantly, the livelihoods of women farmers who depend on and sustain them. Islamic Relief Pakistan is generating new research that connects heat stress with gendered realities, giving policymakers the evidence they need to design more inclusive and effective responses. These initiatives show that beyond being a partner in climate resilience, CSOs are a driver of knowledge, innovation, and trust. And as ADB advances our commitments to resilience and empowerment, we will only succeed if we continue to learn from and work with civil society. So today is an opportunity to do exactly that, to learn from some of these diverse experiences from across contexts, reflect on maybe some of our blind spots we have yet to address, and explore how partnerships can go further in building resilience where it is most needed. So I'm now very pleased to introduce two other members of my team in the Gender Equality Division, Zonibel Woods, Senior Social Development Specialist, and Jinhai Kim, Gender Specialist Climate Change. They will share about our ongoing initiative on strengthening women's resilience to heat stress and how it is helping developing member countries understand the gendered impacts of heat and advance inclusive solutions. So over to you, Zoni and Jinha. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam, and good afternoon, everyone. As Sam mentioned, we have been working over the last 2 years on this technical assistance project that has been focusing on strengthening women's resilience to extreme heat, and Cambodia is one of the 5 countries where we are working. Next slide, please. Next. So I'll just very quickly take everyone through some sort of background around extreme heat in Asia, the particular impact that extreme heat is having on women, and a very short snapshot on our ADB technical assistance on this issue. So next slide, please. So, what we know and what we're experiencing all around us, particularly for those of you who are in Asia, given sort of the late the weather that we're experiencing, is we're having still extreme heat in some instances with what has been this last week a super typhoon here in the Philippines. So we are living in an era of accelerating climate change. That is very clear. And what we need to do now is to look at how do we build resilience against one of the greatest impacts, which is heat stress, which really requires urgent action. And in many ways, heat stress is having a profound impact and posing a threat to humans, to ecosystems, to economies, and to societies. So next slide, please. If you can keep going. Yes. So just very briefly, extreme heat really is a major stressor for Asia and the Pacific in terms of public health, in terms of infrastructure, productivity, and food security, just to give a few examples. It is killing more people in Asia and the Pacific than in any other region, 45% of those heat-related deaths in between 2000 and 2019 were in Asia. Hot weather events can impact not only health, but also mental health. In terms of infrastructure, we know that there's already a growing demand for energy for the periods when we're experiencing extreme heat. And with rising demand, that can potentially have really disastrous impacts on the environment and on our greenhouse gas emission targets if the cooling solutions are not passive cooling solutions or use renewable energy as a source for cooling. In terms of productivity, very recently, ILO released last week, a couple of weeks ago, actually, a report on operational health and safety for workers during extreme heat. The reason being that this is an issue that is having a huge impact on productivity, leading to loss of productivity and work hours in South Asia, for example. And it sort of impacts both in terms of physical health, but also cognitive function and concentration, and can potentially lead to more workplace incidents. So, and then finally, in terms of food security, the extreme heat events are causing agricultural losses and contributing to food insecurity in many of the countries in the region. So next slide, please. So it is clear that, to combat the growing threat of heat waves, we need to look at and integrate disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation, and really understand the drivers of this increased risk and strengthen collaboration across departments. So RTA really is looking and focusing on sort of what are the health-related drivers, labor, climate, environment. And we know that it requires both the strong action from local governments as well as civil society. Next slide. Next. Okay, so very, very quickly, what are some of the impacts on women? In terms of labor and employment, it has the heaviest impact on those workers that are in the informal sectors, and the majority of those are women. So in agriculture, in home-based work, women sort of dominate informal work. With very little protection. Health, women are more susceptible to health impacts of extreme heat, particularly when pregnant or breastfeeding. There's also impacts related to gender-based violence, where we have seen a study that indicates an increase in average annual temperatures of 1 degree was connected to an increase in physical and sexual domestic violence of 6.3% across Asia, Pakistan, and Nepal. Next slide, please. So it has particular, because of the vulnerabilities of female-headed households, it also in some studies have shown that it actually the loss of income annually by by female-headed households is actually higher than that of men. It has a huge impact on the crop value of women farmers, so up to 3% relative to men. And of course, something that we also need to acknowledge is that extreme heat and any sort of climate-related crisis or disaster will also exacerbate women's care work. So women are already bearing the brunt of household responsibilities, and they will face, and they are facing additional challenges in balancing caregiving duties and work commitments during heat waves. One of the things that we have seen that is being used as an adaptive measure during heat waves is the closure of schools. However, just like in COVID, when schools are closed, it is women who then have to forego work in order to be home to take care of the children. So closing schools, not a great adaptive measure when it means that it's having a disproportionate impact on women's livelihoods and income. If we go to the next slide. Okay, so very briefly, what is our technical assistance? We are working in 6 countries, in Bangladesh, Cambodia, Pakistan, Philippines, Sri Lanka, and Tajikistan. What we're doing is we started off by looking at how we can increase knowledge of gender responsive heat action planning in our developing member countries, how we can support the development of gender responsive heat action plans, and early warning systems, including institutional capacity building to enable implementation and monitoring. Then the last sort of part of this is supporting our developing member countries in demonstrating priority women-focused actions and solutions, and this is what you will be hearing about later on in this session. So next slide, please. So if you want to learn more about our work under this technical assistance project, or just generally have access to some of the other sort of learning events that we have organized, as well as knowledge products and videos and infographics and all kinds of materials so that you can learn more about this issue, please scan the QR code and go to our site, where you will have a lot of information related to our work under this technical assistance. And with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague Jenna to introduce the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Zani. So I'm pleased to briefly introduce the Technology Innovation Challenge on cooling solutions for rural women in Asia. As Zani mentioned, extreme heat is becoming one of the most urgent threats in our region, and in the agriculture in particular, rising temperatures reduce crop yields, increase food losses, and put the health and livelihoods of women farmers at serious risk. So to help address these challenges, we launched this innovation challenge last year in collaboration with the innovation team from the Department of Communication and Knowledge Management, with support from the High Level Technology Fund. Next slide, please. So our objective was to discover and test practical cooling solutions that strengthen the resilience of rural women farmers in Bangladesh and Cambodia. And the challenge invited innovators to pitch ideas that are not only climate resilient, but also gender responsive, locally adopted, and affordable and scalable. So in short, we weren't just looking for technology, we were looking for solutions that can actually work for women on the ground. Next slide, please. To encourage participation, the challenge offered up to $500,000 in grant funding with 10% co-financing from the applicant. And we also offer technical advisory services from ADB and market access and real-world impact testing. Next, and then, yeah, thank you. Could we go back to the previous slide? and the response was strong. We received about 86 entries in total, including 36 completed expressions of interest. And from these, 7 proposals were longlisted, and then 4 were pitched. And finally, we have 1 winning solution selected. And the selection was very rigorous. The proposals were evaluated on 5 criteria: development impact, project team capacity, partnerships, and women's engagement, feasibility and scalability, and innovativeness. And each criterion was scored, ensuring the winning solution could deliver both impact and scale. And our partner, People in Need, is now implementing the project, and you will hear more from them about the design and progress shortly. Next slide, please. And finally, let me share some key insights we've learned from the TIC process. So the first is practical and scalable solutions already exist to reduce women's vulnerability to heat stress. And the second is innovations work best when women's needs and lived experiences directly shape them. And third, localized solutions co-developed with women and women's organizations and local partners ensure greater uptake and relevance. Next slide, please. So this challenge shows us that with the right partnership and focus on women, we can turn the urgent threat of extreme heat into an opportunity for innovation and resilience. And when women farmers adopt, and their resilience multiplies across households, communities, and overall food systems. And what strengthens women strengthens us, all of us. Thank you. Over to you, Emma.
Thanks so much, Gina and Zoni. The presentations are really interesting. So let's hear from the group that won the ADB Technology Innovation Challenge. We'll hear from Bante Srai and People in Need. We'll have 3 different speakers speaking on Campot cooling. We've got Aaron Bouchain, who's the Country Director of People in Need from Cambodia, Pierrong Sedung, who's the Executive Director of Bante Srai, and Julia Capelazzi, who's the Senior Gender and Equality and Social Inclusion Advisor for People in Need Cambodia. So we'll hear from this consortium. Over to you, starting, I think, with Aaron.
That's correct. Thank you very much, Emma, for the warm introduction. It's a pleasure to be here today with all of you colleagues and guests. I want to first start by saying thank you to ADB for this opportunity and the continuous support for this project. Joining me today, as mentioned, will be Julia and Prong to share our experience in implementing the Campot cooling, an innovative technology solution to save Campot's world-famous pepper. Next slide, please. First, a little bit about People in Need. People in Need is an international CSO with over 30 years experience in delivering humanitarian development and human rights programming. Currently, we're active in over 30 countries. We maintain headquarters in Prague and London. Currently, we have programming focus in Cambodia includes disaster risk management programming, focused mostly on early warning systems for flooding, supporting the green energy technology transition in the agricultural sector, livelihood development, particularly within urban areas of Phnom Penh, and working in partnership with the Ministry of Education and market-driven technical vocational education training programming. Next slide, please. First, just to kind of frame the challenge, Campot pepper, if you're not familiar, in Cambodia is a prized commodity. It fetches premium prices throughout the global market. In 2010, it received its Global Indication awarding and maintains that status today, and has been recognized by the Kingdom of Cambodia as a priority crop, which allows additional resources and investment to maintain its current status. In 2024, as a result of extreme heat episodes, there was significant crop losses across the sector. Some farmers saw up to 80% crop losses in production that impacted their production yield, and some farmers lost 100% of their crop due to heat and drought episodes. And this, of course, has severe economic impact across the value chain, and particularly the workers. And as mentioned, women, who are a central component to the pepper industry due to their roles in post-harvest processing and cultivation, face substantial economic impacts. And it is clear as Cambodia moves forward that the impacts of climate change will continue and become more prevalent. This means that traditional methods that have usually been used to mitigate or become more resilient are not as effective in managing the increase in record-breaking heat and extreme heat episodes. And so what this innovation challenge is seeking to address is to design and implement a technology that is both practical and scalable, and that can protect crops, maintain cultivation rates, stabilize income for the workers, and empower women farmers to become more adaptable to increasingly hotter and heat episodes and heat waves. Next slide, please. So a little bit more information on the impact of heat on Cambodian smallholder farmers. First, contextually, agriculture is a significant rural economic and employment driver in Cambodia. Agriculture represents about 17% of the country's GDP, and over 2 million rural people in Cambodia rely on agriculture as part of their income. Within this workforce, women make up more than 50% of the workers. And as climate change is increasing, we see more intense heat waves, unpredictable wet and dry season, more intense and unpredictable and longer duration droughts. And this, of course, has impact on agriculture. We see a reduction in crop yields, the quality of plants. We see an increase in intensity and frequency of droughts, and this exacerbates soil quality and water scarcity issues for farmers to combat. And then there's, of course, the impact that these heat episodes have on women agricultural workers. We see heat stress limiting their ability to maintain their livelihoods, and this was evident in our project and the impact of heat on Kampot pepper. There are negative impacts on women's health, including heat exhaustion, dehydration, fatigue, and we'll see some of this in more detail later in the presentation. And then women in Cambodia are also less likely to be able to adapt and implement new solutions. So approximately only 10% of the agricultural extension services offered through Cambodia, whether through the government or through development partners, actually reach women farmers. It's also found that the women are less likely in Cambodia to have access to the financial resources to mitigate economic shock. Next slide, please. So how does heat impact agriculture in more detail? So extreme heat episodes reduces crop growth, it limits the quality and productivity yields. And in the worst case scenarios, it can lead to complete and total harvest failure. And we saw this across the Kampot pepper industry as a result of the 2024 impacts. It is estimated that about 50% of the harvest was lost, and some farmers facing up to 80 to 100% of their loss. And with extreme heat also comes the increase in drought stress. So heat waves, when coupled with a lack of water, increase soil degradation and the lack of quality, and increase water scarcity that farmers have to manage. And also, this was pretty evident within the 2024 episode. So farmers and the Kampot pepper farmers typically can get by on available water resources. But in 2024, that was not the issue. That was not an opportunity. So farmers weren't equipped with the necessary resources, the technology, and the know-how to find creative or to mitigate those lack of water issues. And all this has impact on the rising operational cost of running a farm in the face of all these troubles. So poor soil quality, a lack of quality within the crops, a lack of water means that farmers need to invest in additional agricultural inputs. So this means an increase in fertilizers, an increase in irrigation technologies, and typically these are types of investments that for smallholder farmers are really difficult to maintain. So without being able to manage the economic shock, many farmers are seeking loans through microfinance institutes and incurring additional debt. And we also have the increased impact of health on the workers as a result of heat episodes. So agricultural workers in Cambodia, and the pepper industry is no different, endure long hours under extreme heat. and face a multitude of risks, including dehydration, heat stroke, respiratory illnesses, etc. Many farmers, due to the reliance on agricultural activities as their livelihood, don't have the ability to skip days or reduce their working hours, nor do they have access to necessary resources or tools that would allow them to mitigate the heat throughout the day. Next slide, please. In the design and implementation of this project, we felt that it was essential to bring together the right partners to ensure successful implementation. People in Need, as the project lead, comes with significant experience in the agriculture industry in Cambodia, specifically designing and implementing innovative solutions that incorporate sustainable practices such as renewable solar energy. Additionally, People in Need has longstanding relationships with the Ministry of Agriculture, which can help promote and spread the objectives that are achieved through the project. Bante Sere is a partner implementing the women gender assessment and empowerment activities. Bante Sere is a long-running CSO in Cambodia focused on empowering vulnerable women and advancing gender equality. They also have significant experience in implementing programming within the agricultural sector. It was also important for us to partner with a producer who carried the same environmental and social goals that we were looking to achieve through the project. We partnered with Fair Farms, who is very progressive in the type of growth that they're trying to inspire through not only their farm, but through the industry itself. So partnering with a company like Fair Farms allows us to promote the technology and the Women Empowerment Series across the value chain more holistically. And finally, we partnered with a solar energy provider, Solar Green Energy of Cambodia, or otherwise known as SOGE. SOGE is a women-led solar energy company that has over 10 years experience in implementing innovative solutions for Cambodians' agricultural sector. Additionally, People in Need and SOGE previously worked together on 2 additional innovative technology solution projects aimed at cooling solutions within the poultry and vegetable value chains. Next slide, please. And so the innovation itself, the team has designed and implemented, and we are now testing, a solar-powered cooling and irrigation system designed specifically for Kampot pepper farmers. The solution addresses heat stress and water scarcity through the use and implementation of misters that apply cooling water to help regulate the ambient air temperatures around the Kampot peppers plants themselves, while also utilizing drip irrigation technology to more efficiently use what precious water resources farmers have access to. The project is also increasing climate resiliency and productivity and empowering women through the training series, which Bante Sere will describe in more detail. The project included input from agricultural value chain workers, including women, on its design, the training, and continuous feedback to ensure it was we were meeting and assessing the performance goals, and we could kind of navigate or change the direction if needed. And additionally, through the integration of the training series Bante Sere is implementing, we're able to mainstream a lot of the gender resources and tools to enhance community ownership of not only the technology itself, but the decision making and kind of knowledge and awareness raising activities being led by Bante Sere. Next slide, please. So this is a depiction of the technology itself. As mentioned, it is solar powered. This solar power energy provides the pumping to tanks, which either supply the drip irrigation system or the cooling water circulation tent. Within the cultivation area itself, IoT technology is used to understand on an ongoing basis temperature and humidity levels, which then are once thresholds are released, they trigger the disbursement of either cooling water or drip irrigation to moderate and regulate temperatures and the availability of water for irrigation. Next slide, please. So that concludes kind of an introduction to this project. Thank you very much for your time, and I will now hand it over to my colleagues.
Thank you very much, Aaron, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I am Giulia Cappellazzi, Global Gender Equality and Social Inclusion Advisor at People in Need. It is a pleasure to be joining today's conversation. Women are at the heart of the pepper industry, yet rising record-breaking heat is putting both their livelihood, their economic independence, and their health at risk. Because traditional methods can no longer keep pace, we urgently need practical, scalable solutions that not only protect crops and stabilize income, but also strengthen women's voice and leadership so that they can drive the climate adaptation measures their communities need. As part of the Rising Above the Heat initiative, we worked with our local partner, Bentes Rei, to carry out the gender assessment in the pepper value chain to understand how heat stress is experienced differently by women and men, explore gender roles, decision-making in farming households, identify existing climate adaptation practices, and pinpoint opportunities for gender-responsive climate resilience and women's empowerment. To capture these perspectives, we use the mixed method approach, combining focus group discussions and key informant interviews with 150 participants. This participatory process ensured that the lived experiences of both women and men inform the project design from the very start. The assessment does more than provide data. It lays the groundwork for a gender action plan that will guide our next steps, shaping leadership training, climate adaptation education, financial literacy sessions, and mentorship for women champions. These activities will strengthen women's voice and resilience in the Campbell Pepper sector and will make sure that our climate resilience work is not only technically sound, but also inclusive and transformative. A defining feature of this project is that women's voices are at the center of innovation. Women workers themselves shaped the solution. For example, women from the 2 pilot farms provided direct input to the design and the cooling technology. They guided training content and continued to give feedback during implementation. By starting with the women's own analysis of the problem, both the solution and the technology is truly context-informed and relevant. So this project really goes beyond introducing new technology. It is equally about strengthening women's agency and leadership. Members of the Campbell Pepper Promotion Association are taking part in leadership training so that they can influence key decisions along the value chain. Smallholder women farmers are joining climate change adaptation sessions focused on coping with heat stress to protect both their crops and their health. We also introduce saving schemes, giving women the chance to build financial buffers and invest in more resilient practices. And to carry this momentum forward, 15 women champions from the pepper value chain are receiving intensive mentorship, preparing them to become peer educators and powerful advocates for both climate adaptation and gender equality in their communities. So to ensure this work endures beyond the project, key Campbell Pepper influencers, associations, private sector actors, and local authorities are engaged from the outset. This broad coalition creates ownership and legitimacy and anchors the innovation with the 3 pillars of the society: communities, government, and the private sector. Such model shows how INGOs and CSOs, with their technical expertise, deep knowledge, and local contextual knowledge, and trusted relationships, can bridge these pillars and drive systemic, inclusive, and gender-sensitive change. This initiative demonstrates how climate innovation and gender equality really do go hand in hand. By putting women's lived experience and voices at the center, we not only reduce heat stress on pepper crops, but also we strengthen women's economic resilience, leadership, and voice. Thank you very much. I will now hand over to our colleague Perong from Bantesrey, who will present the findings from the gender assessment. Over to you, Perong.
Thank you so much, Julia. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I am Pirong, the Executive Director of Bantesrey. I'd like to introduce you a bit about our work and what is Bantesrey doing. Bantesrey is a Cambodian woman NGO with experience more than 20 years in women empowerment and also advocacy. Our vision is to help vulnerable women and youth to realize their full right and live with dignity through sustained empowerment and gender equality. Within our strategic plan 2025 to 2020, please go back to current slide, please. Sorry. Current programs, we are focusing on women economic empowerment, gender-based violence prevention and response, and also supported services for the survivor. And another core important program is women in leadership and representation. The project, Cooling Project, is one of the important project under women leadership and representation. So I will walk you through more what we are doing under the Cooling Project. Please go to the next slide. So Bantesrey is coordinating the gender assessment in Cambodia, focusing in Kampot and Kep province. Our gender assessment were focusing on the focus group discussion, key informant interview over 150 community people, including 89 women. So the assessment key finding categorized into two elements. One is on the livelihood and income gaps. Second is knowledge and skill gap. So what are the elements under the livelihood and income gaps? So not so different from what we hear earlier. The income and the productivity was actually one of the key findings that we were found under this assessment. We found that the significant income has been lost between 30 to 40% that link to the heat-related productivity drop. Second is related to health and safety. Women face heat-related health risks due to the lack of infrastructures and limited protection, such as the lack of shade, the toilet, the cooling station, as well as the heat-appropriate clothing. Third is unequal role. We see that men are still nominating the farm and also the funding decision making as well, while women are overdue with doing both farming and also household work. So we found that this is still an ongoing pressure issue toward gender equality in Cambodia. Second part of the assessment was about the gap on the knowledge and the skill. We see that low gender and the related knowledge, where only 90% of women had 90% of women had never heard about the word gender, and only 15% knew about the protective measure for the extreme heat, for example, using the solar power cooling technology. Secondly, is low financial literacy. Only 5 out of 54 women track their farm finance. So the low financial literacy itself is very key point to where lack of basic financial management within household and the family within their farm's activity, and it is crucial to inform further action where we can introduce the financial literacy training to the community women. Third is training and skill gap, where we found that the duty often limited women access to technical training in the area of the irrigation, pest control, and fertilizer use, which confined them as the unskilled work. Go to the next slide, please. So based on the assessment has informed us to lead to concrete key activity, especially the training series, where it's important for the comfort value chain of women. We wish to actually build women's resilience and leadership. Practical training equip women farmer and worker with knowledge to adapt with heat stress and also strengthen their decision making to advance gender equality in the comfort pepper value chain. So under this training series, as highlight also earlier, women and decision making is crucial, where we unlock women leadership potential, prepare women leader with knowledge and skill in gender equality, inclusive decision making, and technology use, as well as gender, climate, and financial literacy, increasing the awareness on gender and climate change adaptation, including financial management as well. Last is about the soft skill for resilience. We enhance the communication, teamwork, problem solving, and cooling technology use. Next slide, please. So under the assessment where Bantisre contributed to the cooling project, as well as the action plan on providing the series of training, which respond to the gap that were identified. For example, when we are talking about the knowledge and skill gap, limited technical knowledge, low financial literacy, and little awareness on gender and heat stress, our action is to provide on-hand training in irrigation, composting, pest management, and cooling technology, as well as we try to strengthen the capacity and knowledge of our community on financial literacy and saving practice. As we learn that vulnerable groups are actually lack of access to financial resources to support themselves with purchasing any technology to protect themselves from the extreme heat. However, ensuring this strengthened financial literacy may be able to support them to understand about short-term financial plan and long-term financial plan as well. Raising awareness on gender equality and climate change adaptation. One of other components that we are working on now as well, we use the training of trainers to have it more sustainable and long-term, reach more community people. So among the community people that we provide leadership training, gender and climate training, and soft skill, we selected the best individual for becoming our TOT to expand the greater reach to the community. Second is, current slide. The protection and infrastructure. The finding, the assessment found that few cooling shade facility with irrigation system, no gender responsive and safety standard. Therefore, the pilot of this project, solar power cooling and irrigation system are in place. We wish to introduce the protection measure and workplace safety practice. Therefore, the leadership and decision making were introduced to encourage the decision maker in the compost pepper value chain to integrate their gender policy and the protection measure with their big and smallholder farmer. We try to actually promote gender responsive farm standard, introducing what are the cooling measure around the farming, as well as the in toilet bill where it can actually respond to the need of the woman worker in the farm. Third is decision-making and agency, as the assessment found that low participation of women in the farm, financial decision, heavy burden between the household work and the farm. we deliver this leadership training and decision making for women to unlock their leadership potential and actively participate in leadership position, build a soft skill, communication and problem solving, support women champion as a technology leader, became the role model for the community, as well as we facilitate community dialogue with men to shift social norms. So we did not exclude men under this program. We engage men to actually join the transformative masculinity training to shift the negative social norm and engage more women to be in the leadership role. So that's all from me. Thank you so much, and feel free to ask if you have any further clarification. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to Aaron, Julia, and Fearong for that amazing presentation. Really, really wonderful. We've got a lot of questions in the chat, and what I encourage the Campot Cooling team to do is to respond to those if you can. We'll take questions for the whole webinar after the next speaker. So keep those questions coming. We'll see if we can get some responses in the chat. But moving, we're going to fly from Cambodia all the way over to Pakistan. I'm now going to introduce Razan Narejo, who is the Deputy Country Director of Islamic Relief Pakistan. We're going to hear about their insights from their rapid risk assessment of extreme heat in Pakistan and IRP's efforts to strengthen gender responsive heat stress adaptation in Pakistan. Pakistan is one of a country most affected by and vulnerable to extreme heat. So this research that IRP have done is extremely relevant. Over to you, Raza.
Thank you so much, Emma, and thanks, colleagues who are joining from various parts of the world. It's immense pleasure and honor to be part of this presentation and webinar. So I will be just briefly introducing my organization. If you can bring slides, please. Yeah, thank you so much. So as Emma introduced, that we conducted one assessment that was rapid in nature around heat stress and its impact on women. Before going into its methodology and overall assessment findings, I will be briefly sharing my organization, that how it's structured and worked across Pakistan. So if you can just bring next slide. Islamic Relief Pakistan is operational in Pakistan for more than 30 years now. So Pakistan has witnessed so many calamities during these 3 decades, and we have been always frontliners. The mission which we are following within Islamic Relief Pakistan, that is certainly driven by rapid disaster response and then fighting poverty across the country. And the principles which are at the heart of work which we are doing, that is first on to be the ground and reaching to those who are in the most need. And the sectors which we have focused upon. So climate change is at the heart of everything which we do, and we work across poverty reduction, health, wash, food security, livelihood, DRR, and women empowerment. If you can just go on next slide, please. As Iman briefly introduced about the topic of this assessment, so you know that one after another Pakistan is experiencing and witnessing different extreme weather events, and heat stress is figuring out one of the most extreme weather events in Pakistan, and we are continuously appearing as country amongst top 10 most vulnerable countries when it comes to climate change. And again is ranking us amongst 181 countries as 150 on the ranking list in terms of climate change readiness. And historical records of recent past are indicating that Pakistan has continuously witnessed high temperature, particularly in southern and western parts of Pakistan. You can see that in Jacobabad, that is southern city of Pakistan, we have consecutively witnessed 52 Celsius and 51 Celsius in 2021 and 2022, and 54, which is quite alarming in Turbat, that is western part of Pakistan. And briefly sharing more about So key projections, which are quite alarming again, which are coming from different models, that by 2050, the rise in temperature would be between 2.5 to 2.8, and by 2080, that is being projected that it would be 3.9 to 4.4, which is quite alarming and terrible. If you can just go on next slide, please. I can share with you that in terms of extreme weather events which happened in 2015 in Karachi, it caused death of more than 1,000 people and 65,000 heat stress patients, which saw a different went through different health support in different level of primary, secondary, and tertiary health facilities. Briefly about the methodology which we adopted for this rapid assessment, in which we looked into gendered impact of extreme heat, particularly on women. So we undertook that assessment in 5 major cities of Pakistan. These were Rawalpindi, Jacobabad, Karachi, Lahore, Peshawar, and Multan. We took into account that it is fairly represented in terms of provinces as well. So it was Sindh, Punjab, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa provinces, means almost in all direction of Pakistan. We conducted 24 focus group discussions and 28 key informant interviews with different levels of or different tiers of bureaucracy, particularly around 4 sectors. It was agriculture, education, health, and informal economy, or you can say home-based workers. So this is what we focused upon in terms of sectors. If you can just go on next slide. Yeah, so focusing upon overall findings of assessment in terms of health. So we have seen that overall impact on the health is quite disproportionate when it comes to women. So women are exposed to heat stress when it comes to patients, and certainly women health workers are also under stress. So that is the situation, and the situations which have been faced and tackled by health workers, that is ranging from dehydration, exhaustion, and particularly pregnant and lactating mothers were facing different health conditions which have been taken care of by lady health workers, ranging from paramedics to doctors. And it has been also found and revealed that at workplaces, there is significant influx of patients, and doctors and paramedics have to deal with significant number of patients, and it is leading towards verbal abuse and sometimes exchange of hot words, which is certainly impacting overall mental health conditions and service delivery of these health outlets, ranging from primary health care to secondary and tertiary health care. And public awareness in terms of heat stress, I can share with you that we are consecutively facing that heat stress situation across the country. However, awareness is still, as compared to other hazards or other disasters, is very low. So heat is still, figuring out the way it is being, taken, particularly in policy circles or communities, is somehow common feature, and it is, taking time to be recognized as significant, hazards and, part of overall vulnerabilities which we are seeing as community or society and nation. And I can share with you that overall health facilities which are tackling these challenges, particularly related to heat stress, are inadequate in terms of clean drinking water, cooling, and essential medical supplies. I can give you one example of, Rawalpindi. We were engaging with medical officer in Rawalpindi. It's very near to, federal capital. And she was sharing, the story that we are almost receiving more than 100 patients daily during peak summer seasons. And there is just one, a toilet or washroom which is available to them, and that is being jointly used by patients and by doctors and paramedics. So that is the situation of health centers when it comes to infrastructural facilities. I already shared with you that it is causing significant mental health stress, because overall facilities, equipment, and infrastructure is quite poor, and number of patients is quite significant and is causing so much mental stress and emotional stress to those who are serving these patients. And there is data gaps and coordination gaps. So still heat stress, heat stroke, or heat induced diseases are not that much counted and calculated properly, and which are figuring out in health information systems or data systems. So that is another challenge which has been revealed by the assessment. If you can go please on next slide.
Sir, I need to ask you to wind up in the next minute or so. Thank you.
Yeah. In terms of education, again, what we are witnessing over a decade period, that most of the time governments at provincial level and federal level are always announcing, premature or, a vacation for summer before period as it used to be. And then during even class, curricular activities, there are fundamental scarcities of resources. Ventilation is very poor, classrooms are overcrowded. In one class you will find more than 100 or even 150 students in rural areas. So, and electricity outages and electricity failures in these areas are quite significant, and in certain cases it ranges from 12 hours to 18 hours. So that is the situation in rural areas. It is certainly impacting overall curricular activities and class proceedings, and teachers, and particularly girls, we have again found through the that frequently getting fainted and seeing so many health issues being induced by heat stress. Infrastructure deficiencies, I partially shed light upon this, that school lacks shaded areas, and even in certain situations, they are just undertaking these proceedings or curricular activities in makeshift arrangement or under the shadow of trees. And when it comes to wash facilities, almost these are non-existent, and that is creating a problem, particularly for teachers and menstruating girls. In terms of preparedness and policy gaps, so far that hasn't been incorporated. That how heat stress, particularly in relation to education, will be taken into account. That is not significantly incorporated, and policies to an extent are addressing other disasters and hazards. But when it comes to heat stress, that is not being focused. Resource constraints and inequities. I shared with you that in rural areas, situation is quite gruesome and glaring, and you will not find any cooling situation or wash facilities there. And there are certain gendered expectation when it comes to girls, that they need properly clad and use those attire in which their body is properly covered. And during extreme heat situations, it is adding to their problems and these situations which I shared about. If you can go please to next slide. Yeah, so agriculture is another sector which is significantly getting impacted. Women are particularly undertaking jobs from sowing to harvesting season, and they are exposed to extreme heat strokes, exhaustion. And another thing is certainly crops, and their productivity and yield is getting impacted. And the situation of heat is allowing less hours of work to be spent during sowing season or harvesting season. That is also impacting, and it has economic repercussions and consequences, particularly for families and when it comes to women. And there are when it comes to agriculture, there are very limited infrastructure regarding cooling. Facilities are not available, and even sheds are not available where they can spend extreme heat hours. And mostly women are resorting to just making themselves wet, and just putting weight shawls upon themselves. This is how they are coping up with that situation. If you can just take to another slide.
Raza, we'll need to move on to your concluding slide now, because we
Yeah,
won't have time for questions. So I'd ask Cha to go to the concluding slide, please.
Yeah.
The one before that.
Yeah. So overall, as I shared with you that heat stress is almost impacting entire spectrum of these sectors, which I shared that it is, and when it comes to women, then the impact is quite significant. And in terms of heat stress, whatever disaster management plans, either at district level or provincial level or district level we have, these are not responsive or amply incorporating heat-related issues and in relation to women. So there need to be, gender-responsive heat action plans, and it needs to be properly figured out in all those disaster risk management frameworks which we have at provincial and national level. And in terms of early warning system, mobile connectivity in certain areas is very poor, and the mobile ownership when it comes to women is not that much significant. So that is another issue which needs to be taken into account. As I shared with you, that gender responsive approach overall in terms of disaster management needs to be focused, but these need to be highlighted when it comes to heat stress, and promoting women leadership across climate adaptation. So that is need of the hour that needs to be focused. And overall, inclusive stakeholder and community engagement, those who are bearing the brand, those who are in the face of heat stress, their voices need to be heard. And when policies and frameworks are being formulated, how their voices are not just being heard, but these are being incorporated in all those policy frameworks. That is another thing need to be looked at. I stop here. Over to you, Hima. Yeah. So in terms of summary of findings, so health impacts, as I shared with you, that these are ranging from dehydration, exhaustion, and pregnancy-related complications. These are, should I continue or? Yeah, Emma.
All right.
Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Raza. Thank you. And we will share the slides if you're agreeable with that, so that everybody can get to see them. So now it's an opportunity for question and answer. There's been a lot of question and answers going on in the chat, and I encourage Raza to have a look at the chat and potentially answer any questions that are directed specifically at you. There was a question early on that I see hasn't been responded to, I don't think, which is that Zoni has responded to Suzette. So the question was about resources on school construction to decrease heat impact. Zoni, would you like to speak to that? Or Gina?
Yes, sorry. Sorry, I was trying to find the unmute button. Yeah, so just very quickly, this is an area that is very quickly that is kind of gaining momentum and a lot of interest. The answer is that there aren't enough resources available to guide schools on how to do this. So one of the things that we're doing in Cambodia actually is Gina has been working with UNICEF in trying to do a pilot there, which we hope to start next year before the next hot season, to look at how we can retrofit some schools or a particular school with some heat resilience measures. And then we also have an education project there where we are looking at where we're actually building classrooms, and through our TA, we're providing support to that project to come up with some school designs that will address our classroom designs that will address extreme heat. So that's the quick answer. I should also point out that there is a community of practice that is being run by a think tank out of India that is looking at heat resilience in schools. And I was trying to actually find the link to the community of practice, because they have sort of regular calls every week to talk about different aspects of, school resilience and heat. And then finally, we are actually working on just a very brief resource for the International Day of the Girl that highlights a school that is a girls' school that integrates heat resilience. So stay tuned for that. So over to you.
All right, Sonny, while you're there, I might ask two more of the questions that are in the chat that I don't see answered. The first one is, will the good practices from Campot cooling be adapted or scaled to applicable contexts across the countries covered under the Gender and Heat TA? And are there similar works on analysis and projects on gender and heat in the Philippines and then also in Thailand as well? So 2 questions there for you. Will there be
Thank you.
scaling, and are there similar works and analysis in Philippines and Thailand?
Yeah, thank you for that great question. Ultimately, what we hope to do through our TAs and the work that we undertake in demonstration projects and pilot projects is to identify what works and what could be integrated into existing ADB projects. So I think the idea is that once we have, the example of what we've been able to achieve or what Bante Saray has been able to achieve through the demonstration and PIN through the demonstration project, then we can look at how it could possibly be integrated into other sort of ADB projects, whether it's in the agricultural sector and so on. So we don't have right now anything sort of really firm up, but the idea is that we can take the lessons learned from these types of projects and kind of show proof of concept and work with our colleagues within ADB to try to sort of promote these kinds of practices. I see that Jinha has her hand up as well.
Okay, thank you. Just to complement what Zoni said, we have been able to inform some existing pipeline that is willing to learn some lessons from the existing testing with the people in need. So there is some upcoming ADB operations that will be informed by the key lessons of the heat resilient, climate smart and climate resilient agriculture practices, and how we can better benefit women and involve women in a way that we can promote their agency, and more to come. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I might take a couple more questions in the chat that I haven't seen answered. This is for the Campot Cooling team, and it's around the private sector investment. Question 1 is, beyond the clear social benefits, what's the tangible business case for the private sector in protecting female workers from heat stress? How can we quantify the ROI? Would Aaron Ferrong or Julia like to take that question?
I can maybe start.
Yes.
So thank you for the question. So I agree that the business case with these types of solutions is very important. It's a reason why we were intentional about inviting a private sector actor from the renewable energy sector to participate in not only design and implementation. And it's, I think, back to some of the points just previously made around the proof of concept. I think the idea here is to really understand how the technology works, what's its operational and economic impact at farm level. And from there, we can have a better sense of what are the scaling opportunities from a financial perspective on the future of these types of technologies. I think it's clear within the agricultural sector that heat is a big challenge, and it needs to be addressed. And I think that this project can help not only understand kind of the technology performance and economic impact within that sphere, but also how gender plays a role in that. And I hope that the findings that come out of this project will make a clear business case for the adoption of these technologies and the gender empowerment training series and activities and resources in the future. I'll maybe turn it over to the rest of the team to provide more insight.
Jerome, over to you, perhaps.
I think that's already covered. I don't have further additional information. Yeah.
All right. Unless Julia wants to add, I would ask that there's a question here that's, is there a manual on transformative masculine training that was utilized by PIN? It's important to bring men into the conversations regarding gender and heat stress, but often is very challenging. Would Julia or Ferrong perhaps like to take that?
I can take this one. Just to let you know that Bantisrai developed the manual on transformative masculinity training, and that's why this training are designed to provide it to male community participant. I'm happy to share the detailed manual content. Feel free to reach out to Bantisrai. I can share with you. But yeah, we do have the training manual on transformative masculinity.
Okay, are there any questions from participants that would like to speak out their questions? If you've got questions, please raise your hand. So there's a question here that I think any of the speakers could address. It's about the scalability and the replicability. What are the pool of resources that we can also apply to facilitate women and girls in the Pacific? Also, students' learning has been reduced due to heat and teachers' performance. So it's about how can the good practices be adopted in the Pacific as well from Asia? How can the good practices from Asia be adopted in the Pacific as well? Would anyone like to take that?
Emma, can I take that just very briefly though? I think one of the challenges has been that when we started this work, for many countries in the region, even though they were already experiencing the impacts of extreme heat, it still was not sort of being addressed as a sort of really critical development challenge. And I think before we start kind of moving, towards sort of doing the work around adaptation, there's a lot of work to be done to even raise awareness of how extreme heat is impacting countries in the region. And nowhere is that more evident, I think, is in some of the small island developing states where we, including the Pacific region, where you have more risky heat days. So we're not just talking about heat waves. We need to be talking about sort of increasing temperatures and the impact that they have on economies, on productivity, on education, and so on. So I think the Pacific, and I'm glad that this comes from a colleague from PNG, because I think in the Pacific region, there's a lot of awareness among policymakers of that needs to be done of this issue. We do need to collect some data, but at the same time, we do need to start sort of figuring out what are some of potential interventions. And if I can share, in Solomon Islands, on an education project that ADB is supporting, there are actually measures to make the schools heat resilient. So flood resilient and heat resilient. So already in some ADB projects, these things are being integrated. But we need to do more, and we need to do more in terms of raising the awareness of policymakers. So this is really in their radar, as well as other development partners. It's not seasonal anymore. It's not something that we will just experience for a month or so, and it will go away. The data tells us that particularly for SIDS, the number of heat days is really increasing and creating, more and raising the risk for people, livelihoods, and ecosystems. I'll stop there.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for your, first of all, to all the presenters for their wonderful presentations, very informative, but also the activity on the chat and the questions obviously shows that this is a really very important issue across the region. We heard questions about scalability, about finance, around the private sector and the motivations there, the affordability of technology. There was quite a bit of discussion about schools and education and heat resilient construction. So a very rich discussion. So thank you to all the speakers, but also all the participants for their key engagement. ADB is particularly committed to strengthening civil society engagement, particularly in gender equality. Strategy 2030 provides opportunities to enhance CSO engagement and in gender equality and strengthen collaboration to mobilise women and young people. ADB has recently approved an operational approach to civil society engagement called ADB Civil Society Approach. It has 3 different pillars, and the work that we're doing today is around engaging with civil society on pillar 2, which is on knowledge and dialogue. If you use that QR code, you can read ADB's civil society approach, which was approved late last year. This CSO Conversations is part of a series of CSO Conversations that ADB holds, also under that pillar 2 around knowledge and dialogue. And our next CSO conversation will be on the 12th of November on climate change and citizen participation. I'd particularly like to thank the Gender Equality Division of ADB for co-organising the event with the NGO and Civil Society Centre. So that's specifically Gina, Ian, Zoni, the communications team of the Gender Equality Division, and Samantha Hung, of course. And I'd like to also thank our own team for event preparations. Thank you so much for the speakers today from People in Need Cambodia, Bante Sray, and the Islamic Relief Pakistan for their time, and for the participants for joining. I can see on the screen that we have a short evaluation there. Please use your QR code. It's only 4 or 5 questions and will take you only a few seconds to answer to help us improve these knowledge events. And we do hope that you're able to join us at future events. We look forward to continued partnership with CSOs in promoting gender responsive work in ADB finance projects and operations across the regions, and CSO engagement and other aspects of ADB's work. Thank you very much for joining today, and we conclude the webinar now. Thank you.